Call to order this regular meeting of the Community Development Committee of the Metropolitan Council. We have a quorum of the committee. Council members Atlas, Ingebrigtsen, and Chambliss are in the meeting. I just left, and they'll join us as soon as they're finished there. So we do have a quorum, which is the good news. So we can move into our agenda. We have an agenda before us. I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Any changes, discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that carries. We have the minutes of the February 18th, 2020 regular meeting of the Community Development Committee. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
You guys are all so far away from me here.
Yeah, it's part of my
Coronavirus.
Yeah.
Get smart.
Yeah.
Council members will move, committee members will move on to our business items. The first is 2020-53. It's a joint committees item. It's White Bear Township 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan. And this, I understand, is going to be presented by Ms. Torres. We have several community development staff out today. So, Ms. Torres, welcome, and thanks for filling in.
Thank you. So, White Bear Township. I'd like to let the committee know that Tom Redessel, White Bear Township Town Planner, and Laura Chamberlain of HKGI were planning to be in the audience today. It looks fairly sparse out here, so I don't think they were able to make it maybe for the first agenda item. But Mike wanted me to let you know that they've been really great to work with and have really appreciated the partnership with the township and their staff in completing this comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Ms. Torres, and please pass our thanks along for their work.
This map shows the location of regional system components within White Bear Township. Regional park system elements: Bald Eagle, Otter Lake Regional Park. Regional trails include Birch Lake, Highway 96, Bruce Vento, and Lake Links. Regional trail search corridors include the St. Anthony Railroad Spur. Regional highway system elements include Interstate 35E and Highway 61. All wastewater generated within the township is conveyed through 3 council interceptors and is treated at the Metro plant in St. Paul. Thrive MSP 2040 has designated the township as suburban. At an estimated population of 11,085, White Bear Township is the most populated township in the state. White Bear Township is located in northeastern Ramsey County. Its non-contiguous components are bordered by the communities of Lino Lakes, Hugo, Grant, Delwood, Birchwood Village, White Bear Lake, Gem Lake, Maplewood, Badness Heights, Shoreview, and North Oaks. Council and township staff have discussed and agreed upon a forecast revision with reduced growth expectations, acknowledging the limited supply of both residential and employment-bearing land. The revised forecast is shown here and as Table 1 in the staff report. The council's forecasts for White Bear Township will be revised simultaneous with council action on the plan. Between 2020 and 2040, the council now forecasts that the township will grow by 200 households and 600 jobs. Table 2 from the staff report shown here illustrates the planned residential density for the area of the township with new land use guidance. The overall density for guided residential land is expected to be between 5 and 7.6 units per acre. Communities with the suburban designation under Thrive are expected to plan for forecasted population and household growth at overall average minimum densities of 5 units per acre for new development and redevelopment, and White Bear Township's plan is consistent with this policy. Existing land use is not what I have in front of me. So here we go. Okay, White Bear Township is most notable for its natural resources, including Bald Eagle Otter Lake Regional Park and Tamarack Nature Center. The township includes 4 non-contiguous pieces as a result of annexation and incorporation. As illustrated in Figure 3, just over half of the community is comprised of public land in the form of parks and open water. Approximately 28% of the township is residential. Maybe this is what I was looking at. Okay, the original town hall, built in 1885, is now located in Polar Lakes Park. Its renovation is nearly complete and will serve as an interpretive center. Although it is small and fairly modest in its design, you might be familiar with the young architect who designed it, Cass Gilbert. He also designed the Minnesota State Capitol building and the U.S. Supreme Court building. I had to look that up. So, for the most part, the plan maintains the land use policy previously established in the 2030 Comprehensive Plan. However, the city identifies new policy guidance along the east side of Centerville Road and south of County Road H2. The plan identifies this 13.5-acre location for a mix of residential densities. I don't know if you saw that I clicked again and there's a little red highlighted area. That's the area that we were talking about. The proposed findings are that the plan conforms to Metropolitan system plans, is consistent with council policies with the proposed forecast changes, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. On Tuesday, March 10th, Environmental Services staff will present to the Environment Committee, and this will be on the Metropolitan Council agenda at the March 25th meeting. So then before you is the proposed action to authorize White Bear Township to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, to revise the township's forecast downward as shown in Table 1 of the review record, and to advise the township to implement the advisory comments in the review record for housing and surface water management. And with that, I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Questions on that report? Any questions? Councilmember Vento?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. Before I went to my first meeting with White Bear Township Board, I did a little homework, and I was trying to find my homework on my phone, and I can't find it now. But the history of White Bear Township is very interesting, and what I was really blown away by, we're going to be observing the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote this month, and women were voting in White Bear Township before that. So they kind of beat the clock on the policymakers changing the law, which I thought was pretty cool. The other thing about White Bear Township is I've lived in the Twin Cities area it'll be 36 years this summer, and it wasn't until I got on the council that I finally figured out I don't have this down pat, but I now have a much better idea of which portions are White Bear Township and which portions are White Bear and which portions are Birchwood and which portions are Centerville or Vadnais Heights. It's very confusing, and the fact that it's a non-contiguous township really adds to the challenge.
Don't forget Deep Haven.
And no, not Delwood. Delwood.
Delwood, there we go.
The other thing to keep in mind is that this township faces special challenges as an urban township. They don't have all of the kinds of challenges that the more traditional townships have. We've had conversations about that as well. So.
Thank you.
Extra.
Councilmember Vento, do you want to move approval of this item?
Yeah, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Torres, before we vote, I'll point out, I think one of our friends from White Bear Township has joined us here, so she's right behind you.
Laura is here.
You made it just in time for the vote. Thank you for being here. And Ms. Torres had wonderful things to say about the relationship between the council and the township and the work on this, so thank you very much. Any discussion on that motion? Discussion. Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you, and thank you for being here. We'll move on to our second business item, which is 2020-54, another joint committees item, the City of Rogers 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan. And I believe, Ms. Torres, you're presenting on this one as well, correct?
I am subbing in for Freya Thalman, who is out injured today.
Thank you, and our best for Ms. Thalman.
Originally, the city staff, city planner Jason was expected to be here. I think he had something else come up and wasn't able to attend, but Freya definitely wanted me to extend how eager the city was to get their plan completed, and that their quick response to meet and discuss the plan was much appreciated. And Freya in particular just really appreciated working with them. They've been great partners in this work.
Thank you for passing that along.
So before you today is the review of the City of Rogers 2040 Comprehensive Plan. This map shows the location of regional system components within the City of Rogers. As you can see, I-94 goes through the City of Rogers. The city has several regional park and trail components. These include the Crow-Hassan Park Reserve on the western side of the city, 2 planned regional trails shown in the green dashed lines. Those include the planned Crow River Regional Trail and Rush Creek in the south. In addition, the Diamond Lake Regional Trail Search Corridor is located in the eastern part of the city. The city's provided regional service at the council's wastewater treatment plant in Rogers, which is shown as WTP on this map. It's blue in the center. This facility was acquired by the council from the city in 2019. The Water Resources Policy Plan identifies in its long-term capital improvement program that the council will construct a new regional wastewater treatment facility, the Crow River Wastewater Treatment Facility, by 2030. This new facility will be located in western Rogers. At that time, the existing treatment plant will then be decommissioned and its flow redirected to the new treatment facility. Rogers is located in northern Hennepin County. It's surrounded by the Hennepin County communities of Dayton, Maple Grove, and Corcoran. In addition, bordering Rogers to the west in Wright County are the cities of Hanover, St. Michael, and Otsego. As shown here, Thrive MSP has designated it as Emerging Suburban Edge, which are shown here in light yellow, as well as Diversified Rural, shown in green. Table 1, also in your staff report, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the council forecasts that the city will grow by 8,600 people, representing 3,500 households, and that there will be an increase of 3,400 jobs in the city at the same time frame. This table, which is also table 2 of your staff report, illustrates the planned residential density in the emerging suburban edge areas of the city. The overall density for guided residential land is expected to be between 3.7 and 12.1 units per acre. Communities with an emerging suburban edge designation under Thrive are expected to plan for forecasted population and household growth at overall average minimum densities of 3 to 5 units per acre for new development and redevelopment areas. Communities with a diversified rural designation under Thrive are expected to plan for growth not to exceed forecasts and in patterns that do not exceed 4 units per 40 acres. Rogers' plan is consistent with policy for its community designations. The city's existing land use map refers to Figure 3 in the staff report. The largest existing land use in Rogers is agricultural, representing nearly 40% of the land area. That's in the dark green, followed by low-density residential at 27% and parks and open space at 18%. There are industrial and commercial areas near transportation corridors, as well as small areas of high-density institutional, extractive, and utility uses as well. The city's future land use map refers to Figure 4 in the staff report. The regionally sewered residential categories in the plan include low-density residential in bright yellow, followed by medium-density residential in orange, mixed residential in brown, high-density residential, mixed residential, and 3 mixed-use categories. The plan identifies new development and redevelopment areas, including 3 focus areas where the city believes there's the greatest potential for land use change. These include downtown Rogers, Sylvan Lake area with low-density residential and park and open space, and I-94 and Trunk Highway 101 area in the northern part of the city, which is planned for mixed-use and high-density residential. The city's rural residential area is shown in light yellow. This area is not planned for regional sewer during the 2040 planning period. The rural residential area represents historically approved development patterns as part of Hassan Township Comprehensive Plan that was in the 2030 round that were typically 5 acres or smaller. The plan includes discussion of rural residential flexible development standards and indicates that development in the rural residential area would need to be done in a way that or manner that does not prohibit future urbanization. So with that, then the proposed findings are that the plan conforms to Metropolitan System plans, is consistent with council policies, and compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. The meeting schedule for the Rogers Plan is March 10th at the Environmental Committee and March 25th at the Metropolitan Council Committee or Council. The proposed action before you today is to authorize the City of Rogers to place this 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, to advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for surface water management, land use, and water supply. And with that, I would be happy to do my best to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Any questions on that report? Questions? Councilmember Johnson, would you like to move approval of
I would
this?
move approval, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on that motion? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just briefly, thank you to staff. Freya couldn't be here, obviously. Hopefully she's getting better quickly. But I just want to say, too, for any of you that got to go up and do the tour of the water treatment plant that we've acquired, and, you know, if you look at the 2030 plan and the 2040 plan now, there's an immense change going on. And then, of course, a lot of infrastructure investments, too, taking place at the same time. And the mayor and council and staff have just been really fabulous. And I think are just leaning into this, you know, new expanded residential options that they've got, increased commerce for this part of the region. And I'm just really proud to represent them. It's a great city.
Thank you, Councilmember. Did we get a second on that? Yeah, we did. Sure. Any further discussion on that motion? Further discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you, Ms. Torres.
Thank you.
Admirable work. Yep. Thanks for stepping in. The next business item is 2020-60. It's also a joint committees item. The City of Forest Lake 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan. And Mr. Wychuk will present. Welcome, Mr. Wychuk.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. I appreciate it. I did say to Ms. Torres that it would maybe make sense if she were to present all three, so you have a seamless.
I think she needed a little break.
She didn't go for that. You might know that I'm not typically the sector rep for District 12. Corinne Wendell recently left the council, so I'm helping out here. So I don't know the community as well as certainly my communities in District 9, 2, and 10, but I've gotten to know it through reviewing this, so that's been helpful. I know that the zoning administrator, who I've spoken to several times on the phone, Mr. Donovan Hart, wanted to be here today, and he had great things to say about working with the council, and I'm also helping the city currently looking at a comprehensive plan amendment, so they seem great to work with from my limited experience. So before you today is the City of Forest Lake's 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and I'll walk you through that report. This map shows the location of regional system components within the City of Forest Lake. In terms of regional parks and trails, Washington County is the park implementing agency for the regional park system components in the city, for which the plan accurately describes the regional park system components. Regional trails located within the city include Hardwood Creek Regional Trail. The city also appropriately acknowledges state recreational lands within the city, including Hardwood Creek Wildlife Management Area and the Lamprey Pass Wildlife Management Area in Figure 1 of your report. In terms of the transportation system, the plan identifies and properly acknowledges that there are two principal arterials located within the City of Forest Lake, one of which is I-35 and the other is Trunk Highway 8. The plan appropriately acknowledges the transit market areas and relevant transit components. And the plan identifies the Daniel DePonte Municipal Airport, which is in the central western portion of the city, and addresses elements of its long-term comprehensive plan. In terms of wastewater, all wastewater generated within the city is conveyed through council interceptors, of which there are 2, and all flow is treated at the council's waste treatment plant in St. Paul. Thrive MSP 2040 has designated the city with 2 community designations, one of which is Emerging Suburban Edge, and the other is Diversified Rural. Forest Lake is located in the northwestern portion of Washington County. It is surrounded by the communities of Wyoming, Chisago City, Chisago Lake Township, Scandia, May Township, Hugo, Lino Lakes, and Columbus. Table 1, also in your staff report, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the council forecasts that the city will grow by 7,400 people, representing 3,700 households. There'll be an increase in 1,400 jobs during that same time period. Table 2 from the staff report shown here illustrates that the planned residential density in the emerging suburban edge area, in other words, the Seward area, is between 3.27 dwelling units per acre and 6.29 dwelling units per acre. And that certainly is consistent with the density requirements for the emerging suburban edge community designation within Thrive, which is overall average minimum densities of between 3 and 5 units per acre for new development and redevelopment. The city's existing land use map refers to figure 4 in the staff report. The current acreage in the city is just under 23,000 acres. A large portion of that land is undeveloped. About 38% of that land is undeveloped. The single largest land use in the city is agriculture at 16%, followed by single-family detached housing at 15%, and I don't know, I have agriculture listed here twice, but yeah, it's in figure 3 of your report. In terms of future land use, of course, there are the 2 community designations. Within the suburban edge community designation, most of that development is along the highway system. There's medium and high density residential, and the mixed use new or redevelopment are located along Highway 61 within the core downtown area and along the west central portion of the community. Most of the remaining gross vacant land will be dedicated to residential development. Most of that residential development is low to medium density in terms of land use. I think I'm missing it. Wait, hold on a second here. Oh, sorry. So, of course, a portion of the city is also rural residential, and as a diversified rural community. And as a diversified rural community, the city is expected to accommodate forecasted growth without requiring the provision of regional urban services in that part of the city. And the city appropriately guides land in line with the community designation. Diversified rural communities are also expected to protect natural resources, protect scattered rural residential development pattern, or prevent scattered rural residential development patterns, and adopt conservation, subdivision, cluster, or environmental protection provisions in their ordinances, of which the city has done. Council staff recommends that the committee and the council authorize the city of Forest Lake to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect and advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for wastewater, surface water management, and land use. In terms of the meeting schedule, this comprehensive plan will appear before the Environment Committee on Tuesday, March 10th, and the full council on Wednesday, March 25th. Happy to answer any questions. Do I have this in here?
Questions on that report, Councilmember Bento?
Mr. Wychuk, I'm interested in the, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm interested in that southeastern corner that has the conservation designation. And is there anything in the materials that you've reviewed that describe it or how that is coming to be?
As far as I know, I think that this is an area that's been in conservation for a long time. I know it's certainly within the unsewered portion of the city. I know the community development director has worked very closely with Forest Lake. Maybe she can chime in here.
Yeah.
Director Barajas.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Vento, the Conservancy area overlays with the wildlife management area that's in there and expands upon it in that all around and kind of to the north and to the west. In the 2030 comprehensive plan, they had identified a smaller portion of that, and they've expanded it to the west, closer to Highway 61, not quite, but getting in that direction, and also included additional designation to the north. That southeastern portion is a part, if you haven't driven in this area, because it really is off the beaten path. It's rolling hills, lots of wetlands, really beautiful area. That's why it is a wetlands management area, or I'm sorry, a wildlife management area. So their intent here is to kind of buffer around that existing wildlife management area. There's some residential development that's allowed in there, but it's very limited. I think it's 1 per 20, if I recall correctly.
Councilmember Bento.
Mr. Chair, has the acquisition of the land been via gifting, or have they had special funding for it, or how have they done that?
Dr. Braz.
Mr. Chair, council member, the wildlife management area is owned and operated by the state of Minnesota, the Department of Natural Resources. The surrounding conservancy is just the land use guiding. I don't know if, I don't think, but I can look into it. I don't think that the city intends to acquire the land around it, but rather to limit development in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions on that report? Questions? Mr. Wycheck, thanks for stepping in and working on this. And so the proposed action is to authorize the city of Forest Lake to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect and to advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for wastewater, surface water management, and land use. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Okay, perfect. Got it. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, excuse me, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Wycheck. We'll move on to our fourth business item, which is 2020 -64. It is a joint committee item. It is our first quarter budget amendment, and Ms. Augustin-Hebner will present. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, committee members. Again, my name is Heather Augustin. I'm the Finance Director for Community Development. I'm before you as a routine part of our annual budget process, and the business item amends the Community Development Operating Budget and Capital Program. During the first quarter of each year, Council staff request changes to the unified budget adopted by the Council the previous December. These carry forward items found in the operating budget attachment were authorized as part of the 2019 budget but were not fully expended. Carrying forward 2019 budget authority allows projects to be completed that were started but not yet completed in 2019. We are asking to carry forward just over $1.5 billion in 2019 authority to complete climate-related studies currently under contract and to pass funds through to the NOAA Impact Fund to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing. This amendment also reduces the Parks Capital Program by nearly $23 million by removing completed projects from the capital program as indicated in the attachment. All projects we are closing have been completed and all funds have been fully expended. The Administrative Adjustment section, Attachment 3, represents project-level changes that have been included for reference and informational purposes only. The Community Development Division passes through state and regional funds to the 10 regional parks implementing agencies. Funds are managed through grant agreements once the Council brings funds into the authorized capital program and at the program level. Council staff then program authorized funds to specific projects in accordance with state statute or council policy. Examples of this include 3 regional parks competitive equity grant projects that you approved with another budget amendment, or another business item, and 4 parks acquisition opportunity fund projects approved by other business items. So essentially what you have done is when we have the funds, we bring it into a higher level program, and then as the council acts, we will bring them in and program those funds to specific projects, and that way grantees don't get caught in our administrative timelines. I am asking that you authorize the 2020 unified budget as indicated and in accordance with the attached tables, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions on that report? Questions? Councilmember Vento.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to refrain from or abstain from voting on this due to the inclusion of the reallocation regarding the Bruce Bento Regional Trail to the Wakantipi Nature Sanctuary at the Bruce Bento Regional Trail.
Thank you. Thanks for that notice. Noted. Any further questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the 2020 Unified Budget Amendment as indicated?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move on to our final business item, our final item on our agenda today. It's 2020-90. It's authorization to negotiate and execute a joint powers agreement for the Minnesota Winter Homeless Initiative, and Director Barajas will present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, council members. My name is Lisa Barajas. I'm the Community Development Director, and it is my great pleasure to bring before you an authorization to spend the money you've authorized us to spend. So if you recall in your 2020 budget discussions last fall, you approved an additional $1 million to be put and paired with Minnesota Housing Finance Agency's work around the Minnesota Winter Homeless Initiative. To do that money or to do that work, to pass the dollars through them and extend and use their powers to put money out in a more flexible way for capital projects, we need to have a joint powers agreement to do so. We are actually in the process of drafting that. We're really close to being done so we can turn around quickly and make this money available very soon. And I nearly forgot about this housekeeping item in order to move this forward. So the proposed use of funds is listed in the staff report starting at the bottom of page 1 as well. And that these, given that the Minnesota Winter Homeless Initiative covers the full state, we wanted to be very clear that the funds that the council is contributing are limited to the 7-county metro area, and more specifically to the jurisdiction that the council has, and not some of the communities that are excluded from the metro, like the Hanover or the New Prague and Northfield in the south, for example. The idea is to support smaller unit or smaller buildings that are more nimble and easier to get up and running, and that are serving households and folks with incomes at the lowest income levels in particular, that the types of projects have very low barrier for residents to enter. As you have heard our homeless action team and our HRA staff report to you, that a lot of folks that are facing homelessness today have a lot of barriers for actually accessing housing, everywhere from bad rental history, for example, poor employment history, or issues with chemical dependency. All of these types of issues can be really limiting for folks to actually access housing on a regular basis. In particular, of importance that both you as a body have noted and others have noted is that units should be culturally specific and appropriate living spaces that provide supportive services as well. And obviously we're wanting these to be up and running as soon as possible. So outside of what we normally provide in our local livable communities demonstration programs, which are on the annual cycle where we typically give awards late in the fall and into November, December, these funds are meant to be expended and get up and running within the next 6 months. And of course, looking for units that would also be willing to accept housing choice vouchers where that is applicable. This is consistent with the conversations that you've been having both in your budget conversations, also in your discussion around the housing goal that's part of your council strategic plan under the governor's direction, as well as in our housing policy plan that indicates that one of the aims of the policy plan is to prevent homelessness by creating housing options that give all people viable choices for safe, stable, and affordable homes. So pretty short business item for you. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Barajas, and thank you for bringing this forward as quickly as you did. I appreciate it. I do have one question, and we talked about this offline as well, and And I just want my colleagues to know that the fact that we were sort of in with the first $1 million into the Minnesota Homeless Fund really generated a lot of traction, interest, and excitement, and leveraged other dollars into that fund. So good job. And also the intent, or at least I felt the intent always had been to leverage other funds, possibly other public funds, into this initiative. And I know that we're accepting housing choice vouchers, so there's some other public funds that are coming in. But Ms. Bras, what are we ensuring that other jurisdictions will be contributing to these same projects, or is there a way to do that at this point?
Mr. Chair, council members, that's a very good question, and we're in the process of determining the appropriate vehicle to make these funds available, whether it's a shared approach with the Minnesota Homeless Fund, which is housed in the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation, or whether it is part of a joint RFP that we put out with Minnesota Housing. So that we're still working out. But as part of that scoring of applications that come in, the ability to leverage other funds, especially to make those projects go with, we're really intending these dollars to be the last dollars in, which is different than our LCA programs, where typically we're the first dollars in those. So yes, we're looking for that to basically to fill the gap. If this is the only dollars you need, then to get your project going, that's what we're looking for. So the intent of being able to leverage additional funds, but it's kind of coupled in there, and I think we'll be more explicit in that as we hopefully are also able to get others to pitch in along with.
Great, thank you. Further questions, Councilmember Lee, then Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was along the same lines, but for the philanthropy side. How come is Minneapolis Foundation involved, or how can we leverage other philanthropies?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Lee, actually, while the fund is housed at St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation, it's housed there because a lot of philanthropic foundations have contributed dollars to specifically to this fund, and they're managing the fund. St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation is leveraging the fund. I did not bring my documents with me, but I know there, at least in Mr. Chair, you probably recall better than I do being on the committee, that there are probably about 10 different philanthropic foundations that have contributed so far, and some in the metro and some that are more greater Minnesota, and some that cover the broad state as well. So a combination of different philanthropic foundations that have all contributed to this fund. St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation is just the home for it.
Further questions, Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, and thank you again for everyone pulling together to make this happen. It's a point of pride, and it is a difference maker. And because we're the last dollars in, and because we want construction taking place in 6 months, and because I've worked in local government to know how approvals processes can take long. So I would assume that these are, wherever this money is going is already in process for approvals or has significant approvals. Would that be the case?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, exactly. We're not looking for someone who's at the beginning of the process, but really someone who's already along the way or only needs that last bit. I think an example that folks have noted, and I'm really upset I did not bring my notes because I'm going to get the names all wrong, but there was a project that gentleman did last winter, and Mr. Chair, you might recall, stood up some supportive housing in very short order, just needed to use an existing building, needed some dollars for some renovation and make it ready. And so the permitting process was very short. They weren't building anything new. They weren't starting with, from bare ground or anything like that. So anything that's going to be quick to turn around, something like that, is a good model for this type of work.
And Mr. Chair,
Councilmember Johnson,
because we have such experts at every level working on this, but I just want to ask the question too. So whatever jurisdiction we're in with this money, are we working with the local units of government to see if they can reduce fees, waive fees, so that their contribution could come in the form of, a fee reduction to help stretch the dollars?
Director
I don't know,
Rojas?
again, I don't know if we certainly can't mandate that, but I do know that it's within the powers of some jurisdictions, and they'll do that.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, that's an excellent point that local governments and jurisdictions do have a role to play, and that the waiver of fees is a good way to do that. We haven't gotten down that path just yet. We're still at the other end of the JPA piece, but I think there is a role for local governments to play in helping to facilitate projects moving forward quickly. And we've seen that happen in other projects over the years since I've been at the council, kind of, a smattering of them here and there, but certainly that's something that we would look forward to. I would expect would be in part of a development application of kind of what are all the pieces that make you ready to go.
And if I may add, also, Councilmember Johnson, the projects that Director Barajas was discussing are American Indian Community Development Corporation, sort of a sister organization to my day job. And one project in particular, Elliott House, exactly that took place. The sense of urgency created by the sort of the higher profile Franklin Iowa encampment, the housing, the Winter Homeless Fund. Hennepin County was very willing to sort of waive some fees and maybe make the project a little more feasible, a little more viable. It moved very, very quickly. I mean, it was amazing. There were actually 2 projects like this. I would note that the relatively small size of the projects, up to 40 units, and I think the requirement that we will have in the JPA for low barrier and also the culturally specific, those are creating incentives for a more entrepreneurial sort of developer. And so these projects will need to be planned in planning and an approval process, but by incentivizing moving quickly within the next 6 months, the hope would be that local units of government would do exactly what you're talking about, and they have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion, Councilmember Lindstrom.
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Chair. I believe you are chairing the advisory group on this entire initiative, which is no small feat. So thank you for leading that effort. And my question is the total number of units that's the goal for this initiative. Either one of you probably knows the answer to this. Do I recall reading around 200 units, 250 or something? Is there maybe there isn't a total number of goal? Maybe I total the number of unit goal.
Not that I'm Director Barajas.
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware, or Councilmember Lindstrom, I'm not aware of a goal having been set. Some of the funds that have been put out already have been for support services and other types, so not necessarily on the unit production side. Certainly the more units, the better, but we also recognize that we have a pretty small pot of dollars here, so wanting to get stuff up and running sooner rather than later, I think is the goal.
And I would know, Councilmember, that on the Elliott House, the American Indian Community Development Corporation project that was put online so quickly, and I'm trying to remember, I think it houses up to 16 people, if I'm not mistaken, with intensive services on site. And the gap, and I can't, don't quote me on this number, but it was relatively small. It was for property acquisition. I think it was between $200,000 and $300,000, and so by covering that gap, I believe it was Hennepin County that stepped in to cover it, and by reducing fees and just making it easier to put it online, it moved along quickly. But I don't know that it's sort of a numbers game on this one. It's more getting a sort of a new model up and running.
Great.
Do you have another question?
Just to follow up, I think you've all answered this, but I was reading about how some of the funds were going towards expanding support services, but just to be crystal clear, this is for acquisition or capital projects, the last dollar, they just need another X dollar amount.
Right.
Just ready to rock and roll projects.
Right, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Lindstrom, that's exactly right.
Thank you.
Cool, yeah. Further discussion? Councilmember Vento.
2 things. I should have mentioned this during the plan for Forest Lake, but Faith Lutheran Church in Forest Lake is in the process of working with Settled, a nonprofit that works with churches throughout the country to build tiny houses, and they're going to be building 12 of them on Faith Lutheran's property in Forest Lake, and just thought that was worth adding to the conversation. It doesn't involve these funds, and in fact, part of the motivation of building these structures on the church property is they're out from under federal laws and they can build faster and differently. But these tiny homes will provide shelter for people who would otherwise not have shelter. I have an unrelated question, but it's timely. As you and the staff, Director Barajas, wade through the next few weeks and months, as you come across information about the special challenges that folks who provide housing and services to the homeless, how they're being additionally challenged by the coronavirus, I'd be interested, and I think the rest of the committee would be interested in being kept in the loop. I sometimes think that my middle name is Consequences because I always kind of, okay, then what happens, and want to know what that domino effect is going to be. And I'm particularly concerned about the homeless population. I think that it's an especially vulnerable population when it comes to mobility and living conditions. And I'm just concerned that this is going to be something that will hit them hard. And I'm curious as to how the organizations who provide extraordinary support are going to meet that challenge.
Thank you. Director
Mr.
Moss.
Chair, council member, we will definitely keep an eye on that and be happy to report back.
Thanks.
Thanks. And Councilmember Abdul, thanks for lifting up the work of the faith community, the tiny house community, tiny houses in the community I'm most active in the urban Indian community. That's a real community solution. It's seen as really viable. I'm going to have an opportunity next month to go out and view a couple tiny house communities in Portland and Seattle as well. And so I'm glad you're elevating that discussion, and also the role of the faith community in the response, especially to unsheltered homelessness. And I think that's a big untapped resource, not fully realized resource within the formula for sure. Any further, Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once you've figured out what all of this money is going for and have it all dispersed, can you come back and tell us what it went for so that we know? Because we've had other times with one-time money, like that land revolving loan thingy that we did a few years ago, that it's like, okay, here's your $1 million, and then whoosh, what happened, you know?
Right. Mr.
Director
Chair,
Barajas.
Councilmember Wolf, I will be very happy to report back to you and hopefully sooner rather than later, especially because we want to get this money out the door quicker. So we hope to be sharing some awesome success stories with you.
Great request. Thank you, Councilmember. Any further discussion? Further discussion. Seeing none, the proposed action is that the Met Council authorize the regional administrator. Was it the regional administrator? Okay. And the chair to execute a joint powers agreement with the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, Minnesota Housing, to provide $1 million in support of the Minnesota Winter Homeless Initiative. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you, Director Rouse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council members. We have no informational items, and so seeing no further business before this committee in record time, I think we are adjourned.